Hey guys, tonight we journey back to Colonial America, a place often remembered through paintings of neat villages, peaceful farms, and determined settlers building a new life across a vast continent. It sounds inspiring when viewed from a comfortable distance. Yet, if you suddenly found yourself transported into that world, with no modern medicine, no supermarkets, no electricity, and no guarantee of safety, your chances of lasting very long would be surprisingly slim. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to imagine yourself stepping off a wooden ship after months at sea. The shoreline stretches ahead. Dense forests cover much of the landscape. Strange sounds echo from the trees. The air smells different. Everything you rely on in daily life has vanished. Survival now depends upon your own labor, endurance, and luck. And with that image in mind, settle in as we begin tonight's journey. The year is somewhere in the early 18th century. Dawn arrives slowly over the Atlantic coast. Thin mist drifts above muddy roads. Roosters announce the morning long before the sun fully clears the horizon. Across the scattered settlements of Colonial America, people are already awake. Many have been awake for hours. Sleep rarely follows the schedule modern people enjoy. Without electric lighting, daily life moves with the rhythm of daylight. During winter, long nights encourage rest. During summer, sunrise arrives early and work begins accordingly. If you were living here, the first challenge would appear almost immediately. Your bed would not resemble the comfortable mattresses found today. Depending on your circumstances, you might sleep on a rough straw mattress stuffed with dried plant material. Over time, the filling compresses. Insects occasionally find their way inside. Dust accumulates. Comfort is relative. The room itself offers little protection from changing temperatures. During winter, cold air slips through cracks in wooden walls. Blankets help, but fuel remains precious. Firewood must be gathered, chopped, transported, and stored. Every piece burned represents hours of labor. You open your eyes before sunrise. The house is dark. No switch exists to illuminate the room. Instead, faint gray light filters through small windows. Candles cost money. Lamp oil costs money. Neither is wasted casually. Outside, someone is already splitting wood. The steady rhythm of an axe striking a log echoes through the quiet settlement. Breakfast does not magically appear. Nothing appears magically in Colonial America. Every meal requires preparation. Every ingredient requires effort. Every calorie has a story behind it. Perhaps your family keeps chickens. Perhaps corn was harvested the previous season. Perhaps preserved meat hangs in storage. Whatever reaches, the table represents countless hours of work performed months earlier. Failure to prepare means hunger later. That reality shapes nearly every decision. Modern people often underestimate how much time was devoted simply to obtaining food. Growing crops involved clearing land, planting, protecting fields, harvesting, preserving produce, and storing supplies against spoilage. Each step demanded physical effort. There were no tractors, no refrigeration, no grocery deliveries, no emergency food supply arriving from a nearby store. A poor harvest could create serious difficulties. Several poor harvests could become disastrous. As the morning progresses, the settlement becomes active. Smoke rises from chimneys. Dogs bark. Children carry water. Men and women begin another day of labor. Visitors from the modern world often imagine colonial life as slower and simpler. In reality, daily routines could be relentless. Water serves as a perfect example. Today, obtaining clean water usually requires little more than turning a handle. Colonial families faced a different situation. Someone needed to carry water from wells, springs, streams, or communal sources. Multiple trips were often necessary. Heavy buckets strained shoulders and arms. During freezing weather, the task became even less pleasant, and water was only the beginning. Laundry represented another enormous burden. Clothing accumulated dirt quickly. Washing garments required hauling water, heating it over a fire, scrubbing fabric by hand, rinsing repeatedly, and hanging everything to dry. A process that modern machines complete automatically demanded much of an entire day. Meanwhile, clothing itself was valuable. People owned fewer garments than most individuals possess today. Fabric required resources. Production required labor. Replacement was expensive. A torn shirt could not simply be replaced with an online order. Repairs were expected. Nothing useful was wasted casually. As sunlight strengthens, activity spreads beyond the settlement. Farmers move toward fields. Laborers head toward construction projects. Craftsmen prepare workshops. Blacksmiths, carpenters, coopers, millers, and countless others contribute to the functioning of colonial society. Many jobs involve physical exertion from sunrise until evening. The average modern office worker would likely find the experience exhausting. Consider land clearing. Large portions of colonial America remained heavily forested. Transforming woodland into farmland required immense effort. Trees had to be cut. Stumps had to be removed. Roots had to be dealt with. Rocks needed relocation. Only then could fields begin producing crops. The process often took years. Settlers frequently described the forest as both a resource and an obstacle. Wood provided fuel, shelter, tools, and building materials. Yet dense forests also slowed expansion and demanded constant labor. If you arrived expecting picturesque countryside, reality might surprise you. Many areas felt rugged, unfinished, and demanding. Even established settlements contained hazards. Roads varied greatly in quality. Mud frequently created difficulties. Bridges could be unreliable. Travel consumed far more time than modern people expect. A journey of several miles might occupy much of the day. Weather added further complications. Heavy rain transformed roads into obstacles. Winter snow disrupted movement. Spring flooding altered familiar routes. Distance felt larger because transportation remained slower. Around midday, the sun climbs higher. Workers pause briefly. Food is eaten. Conversation occurs. Then labor resumes. There is little alternative. Survival depends upon productivity. The colonial economy leaves little room for prolonged idleness. Even children contribute. Modern childhood differs significantly from childhood in colonial America. Young people often begin learning responsibilities at an early age. They gather firewood, care for animals, assist with household duties, work in fields, acquire practical skills necessary for adulthood. Life expectancy remains uncertain. Economic survival requires participation from nearly everyone. As afternoon continues, another challenge emerges. Disease. Many visitors imagine dramatic dangers, such as warfare or wild animals. Those threats certainly existed, yet illness frequently posed a greater risk. Medical knowledge remained limited by modern standards. Doctors operated with the best information available at the time, but scientific understanding was incomplete. Infections that are easily treated today could become life-threatening. Minor injuries sometimes produced devastating consequences. A cut obtained during routine work might lead to complications. A fever could become serious. A common illness might spread through a household. Parents lived with constant uncertainty regarding the health of their children. Many families experienced losses that modern societies rarely encounter. This reality shaped emotional life in profound ways. People learned resilience because circumstances often demanded it. The afternoon slowly drifts toward evening. Shadows lengthen. Workers begin returning home. Livestock require attention. Tools must be stored. Fires need preparation. Meals must be cooked. The workday ends only after many additional tasks are completed. Even then, true rest remains limited. Tomorrow will bring another cycle, another sunrise, another list of responsibilities, another test of endurance. And for someone suddenly transported from the 21st century into this environment, the accumulated strain would be shocking. The physical effort alone would overwhelm many people. Yet we have only begun exploring the realities of colonial America, because beyond the daily labor waited harsher challenges, still dangerous travel, unpredictable weather, food shortages, frontier isolation, and the constant uncertainty that accompanied life on the edge of a growing world. As darkness settles over the settlement and candles flicker behind small windows, one question remains. Could you truly adapt to a life where survival depends on work from dawn until night? every single day. The answer will become clearer as morning arrives once again. The answer will become clearer as morning arrives once again. A pale glow begins to spread across the horizon long before the sun itself appears. The settlement slowly emerges from darkness. Damp grass reflects the first hints of daylight. Thin smoke curls upward from chimneys as families prepare for another demanding day. You awaken stiff and tired. The previous day offered little comfort, and the night did not provide much recovery. Your muscles ache from unfamiliar work. Your hands feel rough. Even simple movements remind you that life here extracts a physical price from nearly every activity. Yet there is no opportunity to remain in bed. The responsibilities of colonial America do not wait. Outside, the morning air feels cool. Birds call from nearby trees. Somewhere in the distance, an axe is already striking wood. The sound has become a familiar part of daily life. Today, however, another reality deserves attention. Food, or more accurately, the constant concern about obtaining enough of it. Modern societies have become accustomed to abundance. Grocery stores contain thousands of products. Restaurants operate day and night. If one source of food becomes unavailable, another usually exists nearby. Colonial America offered no such guarantees. Every meal depended upon preparation, planning, weather conditions, harvest success, transportation, storage, and sometimes simple luck. A single season could influence an entire year. Imagine standing beside a field of corn during late summer. The crop looks healthy. Green stalks sway gently in the breeze. Everything appears promising. Yet one severe storm could flatten portions of the field. An unexpected drought might reduce yields. Insects could damage plants. Disease could spread among livestock. The margin for error remains surprisingly small. Many colonial families understood this reality better than anyone. A successful harvest brought relief. A disappointing harvest created anxiety. A disastrous harvest threatened survival. Throughout the colonies, settlers spent enormous amounts of energy preparing for winter. Modern people often view winter as an inconvenience. Colonial Americans frequently viewed it as a challenge that required months of preparation. The cold season transformed ordinary mistakes into serious problems. Insufficient firewood meant freezing temperatures inside homes. Poor food storage increased the risk of hunger. Livestock losses reduced future resources. Travel became more difficult. Communication slowed. Opportunities for obtaining emergency supplies diminished. By autumn, families worked urgently to preserve food. Vegetables were stored. Corn was dried. Meat was salted. Fruit was preserved. Every available method helped extend supplies through the coming months. Without refrigeration, preservation techniques became essential. Salt played a particularly important role. Salted pork, salted beef, and preserved fish appeared frequently in colonial diets. Fresh food remained available only under certain conditions. For many people, variety fluctuated dramatically throughout the year. Modern kitchens often contain ingredients gathered from multiple continents. Colonial households relied heavily upon local production and seasonal availability. As a result, meals could become repetitive. Imagine eating similar foods day after day for months, not because you prefer them, because they are what remains available. Corn became one of the most important crops in many regions, originally cultivated by indigenous peoples long before European settlement. Corn adapted well to local conditions and provided valuable nutrition. Colonists learned numerous ways to prepare it. Cornmeal appeared in breads, porridges, and various dishes. For countless families, it formed a crucial part of everyday survival. Yet even staple crops could fail, and when food supplies declined, hunger followed. Not always starvation, not always dramatic famine, often something quieter, a constant reduction in portions, a growing awareness that supplies were disappearing faster than expected. Parents calculating how long remaining stores might last, families stretching meals further, people hoping the next harvest would arrive before the food ran out. These concerns appeared repeatedly throughout colonial history. The situation varied by region and year, but uncertainty remained common. Many settlements occupied environments that settlers still struggled to understand fully. Local weather patterns sometimes behaved unpredictably. Agricultural knowledge developed gradually. Mistakes occurred. Experience accumulated slowly. New arrivals often discovered that familiar European farming methods did not always produce expected results. Adaptation became necessary. The landscape itself demanded respect. As the morning progresses, imagine accompanying a farmer through his fields. The work never truly ends. Fences require maintenance. Animals require attention. Tools require repair. Crops require monitoring. One completed task simply reveals another waiting nearby. Life revolves around continual effort. If modern conveniences vanished overnight, many people would quickly discover how much unseen labor supports everyday existence. A broken tool presents a good example. Today, replacing a damaged shovel might require a short trip to a store. Colonial America operated differently. The nearest craftsman could live miles away. Replacement materials might be limited. Money might be scarce. Repair often became the preferred solution. People developed practical skills because necessity demanded them. Nothing useful was discarded casually. Even worn objects retained value. Meanwhile, weather remained an ever-present concern. The sky itself could influence survival. Dark clouds gathering in the distance attracted immediate attention. Rain helped crops grow. Too much rain created problems. Too little rain created different problems. Nature held tremendous power over daily life. Settlers understood this deeply. By midday, the sun warms the countryside. Work continues despite fatigue. Children assist wherever possible. Women manage extensive household responsibilities, while often contributing to agricultural tasks as well. The amount of labor required simply to maintain a household would surprise many modern observers. Bread does not appear automatically. Clothing does not clean itself. Water does not arrive through pipes. Firewood does not chop itself. Every necessity requires time. Every necessity requires effort. Even obtaining light after sunset involves preparation. Candles must be purchased or made. Lamp oil must be acquired. Resources remain finite. As a result, darkness often ends the day's activities earlier than modern schedules would allow. Yet before evening arrives, another challenge deserves consideration. Winter, not the comfortable winter, experienced through insulated homes and central heating, not a season observed through double-paned windows. While thermostats maintain ideal temperatures, a colonial winter felt far more personal. Cold entered homes through cracks and gaps. Snow complicated travel. Ice affected water sources. Wind found ways to reach people despite their efforts. The severity varied depending upon location. But difficult winters became memorable events throughout the colonies. Imagine waking during January. Your breath is visible indoors. The fire has weakened overnight. The room feels bitterly cold. You must leave the warmth of your blankets to restore the fire before the temperature drops further. Outside, snow covers the landscape. Wood must still be gathered. Animals must still be fed. Responsibilities continue regardless of weather. Many colonists spent years preparing for exactly these circumstances. A newcomer from the modern world would likely struggle. The psychological challenge alone could prove significant. Long periods of cold weather create a different relationship with time. Days feel shorter. Movement becomes harder. Simple tasks require additional effort. The season tests patience as much as endurance. And winter introduced another danger: isolation. Roads became less reliable. Travel became slower. Neighbors remained farther away than modern communities often experience. In emergencies, help might not arrive quickly. People learned to rely heavily upon family, local networks, and personal preparation. Communities frequently survived because cooperation increased resilience. Individuals rarely faced hardships entirely alone. Neighbors exchanged labor. Families shared resources. Settlements developed bonds through necessity. This cooperation helped many communities endure difficult years. Still, survival never became easy. As afternoon fades toward evening, clouds gather overhead. The wind strengthens. Trees sway gently. people begin finishing outdoor work before darkness arrives. Back inside the settlement, preparations for the night begin. Fires are tended carefully. Meals are prepared from available supplies. Families gather together. Stories are exchanged. News travels through conversation rather than instant communication. The world feels smaller. At the same time, it feels far less predictable. Many people living in colonial America understood that circumstances could change quickly. A storm, a sickness, a failed harvest, an accident, each possessed the ability to alter lives dramatically. Modern societies often hide these uncertainties behind systems of infrastructure, technology, and organization. Colonial Americans faced them more directly. The result was a society shaped by caution, preparation, and hard work. As darkness settles once more over the settlement, the cold wind continues outside. Candles flicker softly. Wood crackles inside the hearth. For a brief moment, there is an opportunity to rest. Yet beyond the comforting glow of the fire lies a vast wilderness, unpredictable weather, and countless challenges still waiting to be faced. And among those challenges is perhaps the most intimidating of all, because soon we will leave the relative safety of the settlement itself and venture onto the roads of colonial America, where long-distance travel could become an exhausting, dangerous, and sometimes deadly experience, because soon we will leave the relative safety of the settlement itself and venture onto the roads of colonial America, where long-distance travel could become an exhausting, dangerous, and sometimes deadly experience. The following morning arrives beneath a blanket of gray clouds. A cool breeze drifts through the settlement as people begin their routines. Smoke rises from chimneys. Dogs wander between buildings. Somewhere nearby, a wagon wheel creaks loudly as a farmer prepares for a journey. Today, you will discover something that surprises many modern people. Colonial America was enormous, not in the sense of political borders alone. It felt enormous because moving through it required so much time and effort. Modern travelers can cross hundreds of miles in a matter of hours. Cars, trains, and airplanes have dramatically changed humanity's relationship with distance. Colonial Americans lived in a different reality. A destination only 30 miles away might require an entire day of difficult travel. A journey of several hundred miles could consume weeks. The roads themselves often created the greatest challenge. Many people today imagine roads as permanent features of civilization. They expect relatively smooth surfaces, signs, bridges, and predictable routes. Colonial roads frequently resembled rough paths carved through forests and fields. Some were little more than widened trails. Others became muddy channels after heavy rain. Tree roots protruded from the ground. Ruts developed where wagon wheels repeatedly passed. Holes appeared without warning. Travelers learned quickly that even short journeys demanded patience. Imagine standing beside a colonial road after a storm. The earth has absorbed as much water as possible. Mud stretches across the route in every direction. Wagons sink deep into the soft ground. Horses struggle for traction. Progress slows dramatically. What appears manageable at first glance can become an exhausting ordeal. A journey planned for one day may require two. A trip expected to take a week may consume considerably longer. The weather controlled more than comfort. It controlled movement itself. As the wagon begins rolling away from the settlement, every bump becomes immediately noticeable. There are no shock absorbers, no padded seats designed for long-distance comfort, no climate control, no smooth pavement. Every rock and rut sends vibrations through the wooden frame. Hours of travel become physically tiring. Days of travel become physically punishing. For many people, walking remained the most practical option. This sounds simple enough. After all, people walk every day. Yet walking 20 or 30 miles while carrying supplies is vastly different from taking a casual stroll through a modern neighborhood. Colonial travelers often faced uneven terrain, changing weather, and uncertain conditions. The journey itself became part of the challenge. As forests close around the road, another reality becomes obvious. The wilderness feels much closer than many modern people would expect. Today, large portions of North America contain cities, highways, suburbs, and developed farmland. Colonial America contained vast stretches of untamed land. Dense forests extended for miles. In some regions, settlements appeared as isolated pockets surrounded by wilderness. Travelers frequently spent long periods moving through landscapes where signs of human habitation remained scarce. The experience could feel both beautiful and unsettling. Towering trees blocked portions of the sky. Strange animal calls echoed through the woods. Wind moved through branches overhead. The forest seemed alive. Sometimes it felt welcoming. Sometimes it felt intimidating. For newcomers from Europe, these forests often appeared endless. Many settlers described the wilderness with a mixture of admiration and concern. The land offered opportunity. The land also presented danger. One reason travel remained difficult involved navigation. Maps existed, of course, but their accuracy varied. Many regions remained poorly documented. Roads changed, trails shifted, landmarks evolved. A traveler who became lost could face serious problems. Today, a smartphone can instantly provide directions and location information. Colonial travelers relied on memory, experience, local knowledge, and observation. Mistakes carried consequences. As midday approaches, the road enters a region of rolling hills. The climb slows progress further. Horses work harder. Travelers become increasingly tired. The landscape may appear peaceful, yet physical exhaustion accumulates steadily. This is one reason modern people might struggle in colonial America. Many daily activities demanded endurance, not extraordinary athletic ability, simply sustained effort, repeated day after day. Colonial life rarely required sprinting. It frequently required persistence. Hour after hour, day after day, month after month. Eventually, the road reaches a small tavern. For travelers, establishments like this served an important purpose. Long-distance journeys required places to rest, eat, exchange information, and sometimes spend the night. Taverns functioned as social centers, news networks, and temporary shelters all at once. Inside, travelers shared stories. News from distant settlements circulated through conversation. Political developments spread gradually. Rumors spread even faster. A person arriving from another colony might bring information unavailable elsewhere for weeks. In many ways, taverns acted as communication hubs in a world lacking instant contact. Yet accommodations were not always comfortable. A crowded tavern could contain numerous travelers sharing limited space. Privacy remained scarce. Beds might be shared with strangers. Noise often continued late into the evening. Modern expectations regarding personal space rarely applied. Travelers accepted inconveniences because alternatives were limited. Outside the tavern, weather conditions continue changing. The sky darkens, wind increases, rain begins falling. At first, it seems manageable. Then the shower strengthens. Roads quickly deteriorate. Mud deepens. Visibility declines. Travel becomes increasingly difficult. Weather forecasts do not exist. No phone delivers warnings. No application predicts changing conditions. People rely upon observation and experience. Sometimes those observations prove accurate. Sometimes they do not. Nature retains the ability to surprise everyone. As rain falls steadily across the countryside, travelers search for shelter. Those caught unprepared may spend hours exposed to the elements. Wet clothing creates discomfort. Cold temperatures increase risk. Extended exposure can become dangerous. The simple act of staying dry requires planning. Many aspects of colonial America operated this way. Modern conveniences often eliminate countless small difficulties. Without those conveniences, each challenge becomes more noticeable. Each task requires more thought. Each mistake becomes more costly. As evening approaches, the rain finally weakens. Clouds begin drifting apart. A pale sunset appears on the horizon. Travelers continue moving toward their destinations. Some remain miles from shelter. Others prepare to spend the night at roadside inns. A few establish temporary camps. Darkness transforms the experience entirely. Modern roads remain illuminated by streetlights, vehicle headlights, and nearby buildings. Colonial roads often disappeared into darkness after sunset. Travel became slower. hazards became harder to identify. Many people preferred stopping for the night whenever possible. The risks of continuing increased considerably. Imagine standing beside a road after nightfall. The forest surrounds you. Wind moves through distant branches. An owl calls somewhere in the darkness. The stars appear remarkably bright. Without modern light pollution, the night sky becomes breathtaking. Thousands upon thousands of stars stretch overhead. The beauty is undeniable, yet the darkness itself feels different from anything most modern people experience. It is complete, profound, ancient, beyond the reach of candlelight. The world vanishes into shadow. For colonial travelers, this darkness represented a normal part of life. For many modern people, it would feel deeply unfamiliar, and darkness concealed more than scenery. It concealed hazards, road conditions, fallen branches, unexpected obstacles. The unknown always appears larger when visibility disappears. Eventually, travelers settle in for the night. Some sleep in taverns. Others sleep beneath wagons. A fortunate few find comfortable accommodations. Most simply accept whatever conditions are available. Tomorrow, the journey will continue, because distance remains one of the defining realities of colonial America. Yet travel difficulties were only part of the challenge. The roads connected settlements. Those settlements contained people, and wherever people gather, disease inevitably follows. Soon we will enter one of the most frightening aspects of colonial life, an invisible threat that killed far more people than wild animals, storms, or accidents ever could. The next stage of our journey will lead us into the world of colonial sickness, epidemics, primitive medicine, and the unsettling reality that even a minor illness could suddenly become a matter of life and death. The next stage of our journey will lead us into the world of colonial sickness, epidemics, primitive medicine, and the unsettling reality that even a minor illness could suddenly become a matter of life and death. The morning arrives quietly. Rain from the previous day has washed the air clean. Water droplets cling to leaves and fence posts. The roads remain muddy, but the sky above appears brighter. Across the colonies, families awaken and begin another ordinary day. At least it seems ordinary. One of the most frightening aspects of life in colonial America was the fact that danger often arrived without warning. A tree falling during a storm could be seen. A wolf approaching livestock could be seen. A flooded river could be seen. Disease could not. People might feel healthy in the morning and become seriously ill days later. A neighbor could develop a fever. A child could begin coughing. Someone who appeared perfectly fine yesterday might suddenly be confined to bed. For colonial families, illness was not a rare interruption. It was a constant possibility. Modern medicine has transformed daily life so completely that many people rarely stop to consider how vulnerable earlier generations were. Today, antibiotics fight bacterial infections. Vaccines prevent many dangerous diseases. Hospitals provide advanced treatment. Ambulances transport patients rapidly. Doctors can examine the body using technologies that colonial physicians could never imagine. None of those advantages existed in colonial America. The result was a world where sickness carried far greater uncertainty. Imagine waking one morning with a sore throat. Today, you might drink water, take medication, or visit a clinic if symptoms worsen. In colonial America, the situation could become far more concerning. Would the illness disappear on its own? Would it become something more serious? Nobody knew. Medical understanding remained limited. Physicians possessed knowledge based upon centuries of observation and tradition. But scientific medicine was still developing. Some treatments helped, others offered little benefit. Many reflected theories that later generations would abandon. Doctors often worked hard to help patients. The problem was not effort. The problem was knowledge. Humanity had not yet discovered many of the principles that modern medicine takes for granted. Germs remained invisible not only to the eye, but also to scientific understanding. Bacteria and viruses carried out their work unnoticed. People observed symptoms. They observed patterns. They observed outcomes. Yet the true causes frequently remained mysterious. As a result, fear often accompanied illness. A simple fever might disappear after several days. The same fever might become deadly. The difference was not always obvious. Families lived with uncertainty. Parents especially understood this reality. Childhood in colonial America was far more dangerous than childhood today. Many diseases that are now preventable or treatable once represented serious threats. Families celebrated births with joy, but they also understood that survival was never guaranteed. This awareness influenced the emotional landscape of colonial life. People formed deep attachments while simultaneously recognizing life's fragility. Loss was a familiar experience for many households. As the day progresses, imagine walking through a small colonial town. The streets are busy. Merchants conduct business. Craftsmen work in their shops. Children play nearby. Everything appears normal. Yet hidden among the population are illnesses waiting to spread. Crowded conditions often increased risk. Close contact allowed diseases to move from person to person. One infected traveler could unintentionally introduce sickness into a community. The effects sometimes proved devastating. Among the most feared diseases was smallpox. Few illnesses inspired greater concern throughout the colonial period. Smallpox spread through communities with terrifying effectiveness. Those who survived often carried permanent scars. Many did not survive at all. The mere appearance of an outbreak could create widespread anxiety. Families altered their routines. Communities implemented precautions. Fear spread almost as quickly as the disease itself. Imagine hearing rumors that smallpox has appeared in a nearby town. At first, the reports seem distant. Someone knows a traveler who heard about several cases. Days later, additional stories arrive. Then more. Suddenly, the threat feels much closer. People begin wondering who might become infected next. The uncertainty becomes exhausting. Even those who remain healthy cannot fully relax. No one knows where the disease may appear. No one knows when the danger will pass. Colonial Americans faced these concerns repeatedly, and smallpox was only one of many threats. Influenza swept through communities. Measles appeared periodically. Dysentery caused severe suffering. Various fevers affected settlements throughout the colonies. Medical terminology often differed from modern classifications, but the consequences remained very real. Disease shaped history in countless ways. Entire communities experienced disruption. Economic activity slowed. Travel patterns changed. Families reorganized their lives around caregiving and survival. Meanwhile, everyday injuries presented their own dangers. Imagine spending hours chopping wood. The axe slips. A deep cut opens across your hand. Today, such an injury might require stitches and antibiotics. In colonial America, the situation becomes far more uncertain. The wound itself is concerning. Infection may prove even more concerning. Many injuries that seem manageable today could become serious complications. Farm work created risks. Construction created risks. Blacksmithing created risks. Cooking created risks. Life involved tools, animals, fire, and physical labor. Accidents happened. Sometimes recovery followed. Sometimes it did not. As afternoon sunlight spreads across the settlement, daily activities continue despite these dangers. People cannot simply stop living because illness exists. Fields still require attention. Animals still require care. Food still requires preparation. The necessities of survival continue. This balancing act defined much of colonial life. People recognized the risks. They carried on anyway. Resilience became a practical necessity. Communities developed methods of supporting one another during difficult times. Neighbors helped neighbors. Families cared for relatives. Religious organizations often provided assistance. Social networks served an essential role. Without modern healthcare systems, community support became even more important. Imagine a household where the primary worker becomes sick. Fields still need attention. Animals still need feeding. Firewood still needs gathering. Without assistance, the family may struggle significantly. Neighbors frequently stepped forward in such circumstances. Acts of cooperation helped settlements endure hardships that might otherwise overwhelm individual households. This sense of mutual dependence strengthened many communities. People understood that today's helper might become tomorrow's patient. No one remained immune to misfortune. As evening approaches, attention turns once again toward home. Candles are prepared, meals are served, conversations unfold around fireplaces. Yet health remains a frequent topic. Who is recovering? Who has fallen ill? Which communities are experiencing outbreaks? News about disease travels rapidly because everyone understands its importance. The invisible threat never remains far from people's minds. And then there is another aspect of colonial medicine that modern visitors might find unsettling. Surgery without modern anesthesia. Surgical procedures often involved tremendous pain. Patients endured experiences that would be almost unimaginable today. Doctors performed operations when necessary, but limitations remained significant. Every procedure carried risks. Pain management options were limited. Infection remained a constant concern. Many people feared surgery almost as much as the conditions requiring it. Yet sometimes there was no alternative. Survival demanded difficult choices. Throughout colonial America, countless individuals displayed remarkable courage while facing circumstances that modern medicine now handles far more effectively. Their experiences remind us how dramatically healthcare has changed over the centuries. As darkness settles outside, the settlement grows quieter. The crackling fire provides warmth. The day's labor has ended. Families hope that tomorrow will bring health and stability. Yet beyond the walls of their homes, countless unseen threats continue moving through the world. Some drift from town to town with travelers. Others linger within local communities. All possess the ability to transform lives without warning. And while disease represented one of the greatest dangers facing colonial Americans, it was not the only force capable of disrupting daily life, because beyond the settlements stretched a vast frontier where isolation, uncertainty, and nature itself created challenges unlike anything most modern people have ever experienced. Tomorrow, our journey will carry us beyond the edges of established communities and into the rugged frontier, where survival depended not only on hard work, but on courage, adaptability, and a willingness to face a world that remained largely untamed. Tomorrow, our journey will carry us beyond the edges of established communities and into the rugged frontier, where survival depended not only on hard work, but on courage, adaptability, and a willingness to face a world that remained largely untamed. The first light of dawn creeps across the landscape. Mist hangs low above rivers and meadows. The familiar sounds of village life gradually fade behind you as the settlement disappears into the distance. Chimneys no longer rise above the trees. The steady noise of human activity grows quieter. Ahead lies the frontier. For many modern people, the word frontier brings images of adventure and opportunity. Colonial Americans certainly saw opportunity. They also saw hardship, a great deal of hardship. The farther one traveled from established settlements, the more uncertain life became. Roads became rougher. Supplies became harder to obtain. Assistance became less accessible. The margin between success and failure narrowed considerably. Imagine deciding to build a new life beyond the edge of an existing community. At first, the idea sounds appealing. Land appears plentiful. Forests stretch endlessly in every direction. The possibilities seem enormous. Then reality begins to reveal itself. Before crops can grow, trees must be removed. Before families can settle comfortably, shelter must be constructed. Before communities can thrive, roads, mills, wells, and countless other necessities must be established. Everything begins from almost nothing. A modern visitor would quickly discover that nature does not care about plans. Nature does not care about ambitions. Nature does not care about schedules. The forest simply exists, and the forest is immense. Imagine standing among towering trees that have grown undisturbed for generations. Their trunks are massive. Their branches block much of the sunlight. The ground beneath them is uneven and cluttered with roots, rocks, fallen logs, and thick vegetation. Removing even a small section requires an astonishing amount of labor. Each tree must be cut. Branches must be cleared. Wood must be moved. Stumps must be removed or worked around. Days of effort produce only modest progress. Weeks of effort produce somewhat more. Months of effort finally begin transforming the landscape. Many frontier families spent years creating productive farms. The work seemed endless because new challenges constantly appeared. As one obstacle disappeared, another emerged. After trees came fences. After fences came fields. After fields came barns. After barns came maintenance. The process never truly ended. The frontier rewarded persistence more than speed. This reality often surprised newcomers. Many settlers arrived with optimistic expectations. The wilderness quickly taught patience. As the morning continues, imagine helping construct a cabin. You might expect a simple building project. In reality, nearly every stage demands physical effort. Trees must first be selected and cut. Logs must be transported. Materials must be shaped using hand tools. Every wall requires careful placement. Every gap requires attention. There are no power tools, no delivery trucks, no hardware stores stocked with endless supplies. Everything depends upon available resources and human labor. Construction becomes an exercise in endurance. When the cabin is finally complete, relief follows. Yet even then, new concerns immediately appear. A roof requires maintenance. Rain finds weaknesses. Wind tests construction quality. Winter exposes flaws that seemed insignificant during warmer months. The house provides shelter, but it also becomes another responsibility. Everything on the frontier demands upkeep. Meanwhile, isolation begins to make itself felt. This is one of the aspects of colonial life that modern people often underestimate. Today, communication happens almost instantly. A message can cross continents in seconds. Emergency services can often be reached with a phone call. Friends and family remain connected regardless of distance. Frontier life operated very differently. The nearest neighbor might live miles away. A doctor might live even farther. Important news could require days or weeks to arrive. A person facing difficulties often had to solve them independently. Imagine suffering an injury while working alone. There is no emergency hotline, no ambulance, no rapid transportation. Help arrives only if someone notices your absence or happens to pass nearby. This reality encouraged self-reliance. Frontier settlers learned practical skills because necessity left little choice. They repaired tools, built structures, preserved food, managed livestock, handled countless challenges themselves. Dependence upon distant assistance was often unrealistic. As midday approaches, the sun climbs higher. The forest seems calmer now. Birds move among branches overhead. A gentle breeze rustles leaves. The landscape appears peaceful, and often it was. Yet peace could be deceptive. The frontier contained risks that modern urban life rarely presents. Rivers provide one example. A river may appear harmless from a distance. Its surface reflects sunlight beautifully. The current seems manageable. Then someone attempts a crossing. Water levels change rapidly after storms. Currents become stronger than expected. Footing disappears beneath the surface. Many colonial travelers learned to respect rivers because underestimating them carried consequences. Bridges existed in some locations. In many others, travelers relied upon ferries, fords, or personal judgment. Each crossing involved uncertainty. The same principle applied to weather. A pleasant morning could transform dramatically before sunset. Dark clouds might appear unexpectedly. Thunderstorms could arrive with surprising speed. Lightning, strong winds, and heavy rain altered plans immediately. There was no forecast to consult, no radar to examine. People relied upon observation and experience. Sometimes those observations proved correct. Sometimes nature ignored expectations entirely. As afternoon unfolds, another reality becomes apparent. Loneliness. Frontier life could be surprisingly isolated. Modern people spend much of their lives surrounded by communication. Even when physically alone, they remain connected through technology. Frontier settlers often experienced genuine solitude. Hours could pass without seeing another person. Days might pass without meaningful conversation outside one's immediate household. Some individuals adapted well, others struggled. The emotional challenge of isolation should not be underestimated. Human beings are social creatures. Communities provide comfort, support, and a sense of belonging. The farther settlers moved into remote regions, the more difficult maintaining those connections sometimes became. Yet, despite the hardships, people continued arriving. Why? Because the frontier offered possibilities. Land ownership represented opportunity. Economic advancement seemed achievable. Many families hoped to create better futures for themselves and their children. The risks were significant. The rewards could be significant as well. This balance between hardship and opportunity shaped much of colonial expansion. People accepted difficult conditions because they believed the effort might eventually improve their lives. Some achieved that goal. Others encountered setbacks. Many experienced both success and failure at different times. As the afternoon begins fading toward evening, smoke becomes visible in the distance. Another small settlement, another cluster of families attempting to build lives in a demanding environment. The sight brings reassurance. Human presence matters more when surrounded by vast wilderness. Even a handful of homes can feel comforting after long hours in isolation. The settlement is modest. A few cabins, several barns, a dirt road winding between structures, children playing nearby, animals moving through fenced areas. Nothing grand, nothing impressive by modern standards. Yet every building represents determination. Every field represents effort. Every family represents countless sacrifices made in pursuit of survival. The frontier is built one day at a time, one tree cut, one field planted, one structure completed, one winter endured. As darkness approaches, lanterns begin appearing in windows. The forest grows quieter. Night settles across the landscape. Inside the cabins, families gather around fires. Stories are shared. Plans are discussed. Tools are repaired. The day's work finally ends. Outside, however, the wilderness remains vast and mysterious. The frontier has not been conquered. It has merely been occupied in small pockets. Nature still dominates much of the continent, and among the many challenges frontier families faced, one of the most difficult involved raising children in such an unforgiving environment, because childhood in colonial America looked nothing like childhood today. The next stage of our journey will follow colonial boys and girls through their daily lives, revealing why growing up in early America demanded maturity, responsibility, and resilience from a remarkably young age. The next stage of our journey will follow colonial boys and girls through their daily lives, revealing why growing up in early America demanded maturity, responsibility, and resilience from a remarkably young age. The sun rises over the frontier settlement. Morning light filters through gaps in wooden shutters. Smoke begins drifting from chimneys as fires are rekindled after the night. Roosters announce the start of another day, though few people need the reminder. Most families are already awake. Among them are children. Modern childhood is often associated with schools, toys, sports, entertainment, and years devoted primarily to learning and development. Colonial childhood looked very different. Children certainly laughed. They played games. They formed friendships. They explored the world around them. Yet, from an early age, they were also expected to contribute. Life demanded it. A household struggling to survive could not afford to leave every responsibility to adults alone. Imagine being 10 years old in colonial America. Before breakfast is finished, tasks are already waiting. Perhaps water needs carrying from a nearby well. Perhaps chickens need feeding. Perhaps firewood must be gathered. Perhaps younger siblings require supervision. The exact duties vary from family to family, but responsibilities arrive early. Many children grow up understanding that their efforts matter, not in some distant future, not after reaching adulthood. Right now, every day, the survival of the household depends upon everyone's contribution. This expectation shapes the rhythm of childhood. A colonial boy might spend part of the day helping in fields, caring for livestock, repairing fences, or learning practical trades from his father or another skilled worker. A colonial girl might assist with cooking, sewing, preserving food, washing clothing, caring for children, or managing countless household tasks. Of course, these experiences varied depending upon region, wealth, culture, and family circumstances. Yet one pattern appeared repeatedly across the colonies. Children were introduced to adult responsibilities much earlier than many modern people would expect. The goal was not merely obedience. The goal was preparation. Life offered few guarantees. Practical knowledge carried tremendous value. A child who learned useful skills became an adult better equipped to survive. As the morning progresses, imagine accompanying a family through its routine. The parents are busy. The children are busy. Everyone has something to do. Even small tasks matter. A bucket of water brought into the house saves someone else a trip. A few pieces of firewood gathered today help maintain warmth tonight. A repaired tool prevents problems later. Colonial families often operated like small economic units, where every contribution held significance. This arrangement sometimes created a stronger connection between effort and outcome than many modern people experience. Children could see exactly how their work benefited the household. The relationship was immediate, concrete, visible. If crops succeeded, food supplies improved. If chores were neglected, difficulties followed. The consequences of actions were often easier to observe. As sunlight strengthens, another important aspect of childhood emerges: education. Contrary to popular misconceptions, many colonists valued education highly. Reading held particular importance in numerous communities. Parents often wanted their children to acquire literacy whenever circumstances allowed. However, educational experiences varied dramatically. Some children attended schools, others learned primarily at home. Some received extensive instruction, others had limited opportunities due to geography, finances, or household needs. Imagine a small one-room schoolhouse. Students of different ages gather together. The room is simple. The furniture is basic. The resources available are modest compared to modern classrooms. Yet learning still occurs. Reading lessons, writing exercises, arithmetic, religious instruction in many areas. Teachers faced unique challenges because students often possessed varying skill levels and ages. The educational environment required flexibility. Not every child attended regularly. Agricultural schedules influenced attendance. Seasonal labor demands sometimes took priority. Life's practical requirements frequently shaped educational opportunities. Even so, many families recognized the value of learning. Literacy opened doors. Numeracy improved economic prospects. Knowledge offered advantages in an uncertain world. As midday approaches, lessons end for some children while work begins for others. A modern observer might notice something surprising. The distinction between childhood and adulthood often appears less pronounced than expected. Certainly children remained children. They played games. They laughed. They made mistakes. Yet society frequently treated them as future adults preparing for real responsibilities, rather than as individuals separated from adult concerns for extended periods. This mindset influenced expectations. Boys learned skills they would need later. Girls learned skills they would need later. Training occurred continuously through participation in daily life. The frontier itself became a classroom. The farm became a classroom. The workshop became a classroom. Experience served as a teacher. Imagine spending an afternoon helping repair a fence. At first, the task seems simple. Then practical lessons emerge. How should posts be positioned? Which materials last longer? What happens if corners are poorly constructed? Knowledge accumulates gradually. The same process occurs with cooking, farming, sewing, woodworking, animal care, and countless other activities. Colonial children often learned by doing. Observation blended with participation. Mistakes became lessons. Success built confidence. Meanwhile, recreation still existed. Children found ways to entertain themselves, despite possessing fewer manufactured toys than modern children enjoy. Games emerged from creativity. Simple objects became sources of amusement. Outdoor spaces provided opportunities for exploration. Stories circulated among friends and family members. Entertainment required imagination more than technology. Imagine a group of children gathering after chores. They race across open fields. They invent games. They share stories. For a while, the burdens of responsibility fade into the background. Children remain children regardless of historical period. Curiosity survives. Play survives. Laughter survives. These elements appear throughout human history. Yet colonial childhood also contained realities that modern societies rarely encounter. One of those realities was risk. Many environments contained hazards. Open fires existed in nearly every home. Tools were used regularly. Animals could be unpredictable. Rivers posed dangers. Illness remained a constant concern. Parents understood that accidents could happen quickly. Children learned caution because circumstances demanded it. Imagine helping with farm work near a team of horses. The animals are valuable and generally reliable. They are also powerful. A moment of carelessness can create problems. The same principle applies throughout colonial life. Many daily activities carried risks that modern safety standards now reduce. Children learned responsibility partly because responsibility improved survival. As afternoon drifts toward evening, attention returns to the household. Meals require preparation. Animals require feeding. Water must be carried. The day's responsibilities continue. Some children feel tired. Adults feel tired as well. Fatigue becomes a familiar companion in a society built upon physical labor. Yet work continues because necessity leaves little choice. This experience creates a different relationship with comfort. Many conveniences modern people consider essential simply do not exist. Children grow accustomed to conditions that might surprise modern observers. Cold rooms during winter, long hours of work, limited personal possessions, physical effort as a routine part of daily life. These realities shape character in complex ways. They encourage resilience. They encourage adaptability. They also create hardships. Colonial childhood was neither purely miserable nor purely idyllic. Like most human experiences, it contained both joys and challenges. As evening settles across the settlement, families gather together. The fire provides warmth. Candles flicker softly. Stories are told. Lessons are shared. Children listen, while adults discuss weather, crops, news, and plans for the future. Knowledge passes from one generation to the next. Many of the skills required for survival are transmitted in precisely these moments, not through formal lectures, through conversation, observation, participation, tradition. Outside, darkness spreads across the frontier. The forest becomes a silhouette beneath the stars. Tomorrow will bring another day of responsibilities, another day of learning, another day of preparation for adulthood. And among the lessons colonial children learned, perhaps none was more important than understanding work itself, because in colonial America, labor shaped nearly every aspect of life. The next part of our journey will take us into the workshops, farms, docks, and businesses of the colonies, where men, women, and children spent countless hours working simply to keep society functioning. The next part of our journey will take us into the workshops, farms, docks, and businesses of the colonies, where men, women, and children spent countless hours working simply to keep society functioning. Dawn arrives beneath a clear sky. The frontier settlement slowly awakens as sunlight spreads across rooftops and fields. Birds call from nearby trees. Horses shift inside their stalls. Smoke begins rising from chimneys as breakfast preparations get underway. For a brief moment, everything feels peaceful. Then the work begins. In colonial America, work was not merely a way to earn money. Work was life itself. Nearly every object people used existed because someone had spent long hours creating it. Every loaf of bread, every wooden chair, every wagon wheel, every shirt, every fence post represented labor. Modern societies often hide this reality behind factories, supply chains, and technology. Colonial Americans encountered it every day. The connection between effort and survival remained visible. Imagine stepping outside shortly after sunrise. Everywhere you look, people are already occupied. A farmer heads toward his fields. A blacksmith opens his workshop. A carpenter prepares his tools. Women begin household duties that will continue for much of the day. Children carry water and perform chores. The settlement hums with activity. Nobody has much time to waste. The amount of labor required simply to maintain daily life would surprise many modern visitors. Consider a simple loaf of bread. Today, purchasing one may require only a few minutes. In colonial America, the process begins months earlier. Someone must prepare the field. Someone must plant grain. Someone must protect the crop. Someone must harvest it. Someone must transport it. Someone must grind it into flour. Someone must bake it. Only then does bread finally reach the table. Each step demands time. Each step demands effort. This pattern appears everywhere. Nothing arrives easily. Nothing arrives instantly. As the morning progresses, let us visit the blacksmith. The workshop stands near the center of the settlement. Even before entering, the sounds become unmistakable. Metal striking metal, the hiss of hot iron meeting water, the crackle of fire. The blacksmith occupies one of the most important positions in colonial society. Without blacksmiths, many essential tools become difficult to obtain. Axes, nails, horseshoes, knives, farming equipment, countless objects depend upon skilled metalworking. Inside the workshop, the heat feels intense. The forge burns brightly. Sweat forms quickly despite the early hour. The blacksmith lifts a glowing piece of iron and places it upon an anvil. A hammer rises and falls repeatedly. Each strike gradually transforms the metal. The work requires strength. It requires precision. It requires experience. Mistakes waste valuable materials. Success keeps the settlement functioning. Nearby, another craftsman begins his own day. The carpenter, Colonial America, constantly demanded construction. Homes needed building. Barns needed building. Wagons needed repair. Furniture needed crafting. Bridges needed maintenance. Wood existed in abundance across many regions. But transforming trees into useful structures required considerable skill. Imagine watching a carpenter shape a beam by hand. Every cut matters. Every measurement matters. Power tools do not exist. Machines remain limited. The craftsman's knowledge serves as his greatest asset. Hours of work produce results that modern equipment might accomplish in minutes. Yet colonial society depends upon such efforts. Without skilled workers, communities struggle. As sunlight climbs higher, activity increases along the waterfront. In coastal towns, docks become centers of economic life. Ships arrive carrying goods, news, passengers, and opportunities. Sailors unload cargo. Merchants negotiate transactions. Laborers move heavy materials. The harbor remains alive with movement. To modern observers, the pace might seem slow. Compared to contemporary shipping operations, it certainly is. Yet for colonial communities, these ports connect distant regions and sustain economic growth. A ship arriving from overseas may bring products unavailable locally. Tools, books, cloth, household goods, important correspondence, even small deliveries can influence daily life significantly. The colonies are not isolated. They remain connected to larger networks of trade. Still, every shipment requires weeks or months of travel. The ocean does not operate according to schedules. Weather determines much. As midday approaches, attention shifts toward the farms that sustain much of colonial society. Agriculture forms the foundation of life for countless families. Without successful farms, settlements cannot survive. Imagine standing beside a farmer during harvest season. The workload appears endless. Fields stretch toward the horizon. Crops must be gathered before weather destroys them. Every available hand becomes valuable. Men work, women work, children work. Neighbors sometimes assist one another. The harvest cannot wait. Nature follows its own timetable. Missing the right moment can create serious consequences. Colonial farmers understood urgency. They also understood uncertainty. A field that appears promising in spring may disappoint by autumn. Drought, flooding, insects, disease, storms, numerous factors influence outcomes. Farming involves effort, but effort alone does not guarantee success. Nature always retains the final vote. This uncertainty shapes the mindset of many colonial families. Preparation becomes essential. Flexibility becomes valuable. Patience becomes necessary. As the afternoon unfolds, another aspect of colonial labor deserves attention. Domestic work. Modern people sometimes underestimate the sheer volume of household labor required before industrialization. The reality is remarkable. Imagine spending an entire day washing clothes. Water must first be collected, then heated. Garments must be scrubbed by hand, rinsed repeatedly, wrung out, hung to dry. The process consumes hours. Now imagine preparing meals without modern appliances, or preserving food for winter, or producing candles, or spinning thread, or sewing garments. The workload accumulates quickly. Many women in colonial America managed responsibilities that required extensive knowledge and tremendous effort. Their contributions formed a critical part of household survival. Without that labor, communities could not function. As the day continues, fatigue becomes increasingly noticeable. Colonial work rarely offers the variety of a modern lifestyle. Many tasks involve repetitive physical effort, day after day, week after week, season after season. The body adapts, muscles strengthen, endurance improves, yet exhaustion remains familiar. Modern visitors would likely struggle with the relentless nature of the workload. There are few shortcuts, few machines, few opportunities to delegate difficult tasks. If something needs doing, someone must do it manually. Imagine carrying heavy buckets repeatedly across uneven ground, chopping wood for hours, digging fields beneath summer heat, repairing fences under cold winds. The cumulative effect becomes substantial. Many colonial people developed remarkable resilience simply because daily life required it. Yet work was not distributed equally throughout society. Wealth differences existed. Some individuals owned larger farms. Some operated successful businesses. Others possessed fewer resources. Economic opportunities varied considerably. Colonial America was not a single uniform experience. Different regions developed different economies. Different communities developed different priorities. A merchant in a busy port city lived differently from a farmer on the frontier. A skilled artisan experienced life differently from a laborer. Even so, hard work remained a common theme across many social levels. As evening approaches, workers begin returning home. Tools are cleaned and stored. Animals receive attention. Fires are prepared. The pace gradually slows. For the first time since dawn, there is an opportunity to rest. The settlement glows softly beneath the fading sunlight. Voices drift from open doorways. Families gather for meals. Children finish remaining chores. The day finally draws toward its conclusion. Yet, even during moments of rest, uncertainty lingers. A poor harvest could threaten future food supplies. A damaged tool might interrupt important work. A sudden illness could remove a vital worker from a household. Colonial society depends upon labor because labor sustains everything. When labor is disrupted, difficulties quickly follow. This constant awareness shapes daily decision-making. People plan ahead whenever possible. They store resources. They repair rather than replace. They prepare for challenges before those challenges arrive. Outside, darkness slowly spreads across fields and forests. The stars emerge overhead. The settlement grows quieter. Another day of labor has ended. Tomorrow, however, we will explore something many modern people rarely think about when imagining colonial America. Money, not simply earning it, understanding it, because colonial currencies, trade systems, debts, shortages, and economic uncertainty created problems that would leave many modern visitors thoroughly confused. The next stage of our journey will reveal why buying and selling in colonial America was often far more complicated than simply handing someone a few coins. The next stage of our journey will reveal why buying and selling in colonial America was often far more complicated than simply handing someone a few coins. The morning begins with the sound of commerce, not the electronic chime of cash registers, not the vibration of smartphones announcing purchases, not the hum of delivery trucks transporting goods across vast networks. Instead, the sounds are simpler. Wagon wheels rolling across dirt roads, merchants unlocking wooden doors, livestock moving through market areas, voices carrying through the cool morning air. As the settlement awakens, people begin exchanging goods, services, and information. At first glance, the process seems familiar. People need things. Other people provide those things. Yet beneath the surface, colonial America's economy operates in ways that would puzzle many modern visitors. One of the biggest surprises concerns money itself. Imagine reaching into your pocket, expecting to find familiar currency. You pull out a modern banknote. Immediately, a problem appears. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody accepts it. Nobody understands its value. In colonial America, money existed, but not always in the convenient, standardized form modern societies enjoy. Coins circulated. Paper currency circulated. Foreign currency circulated. Barter remained common in many places. Credit played an important role. The result was a system that often required flexibility and local knowledge. Imagine visiting a colonial market. Farmers have arrived with produce. Craftsmen display their work. Merchants offer imported goods. Customers move between stalls, examining available products. Everything appears active and lively. You decide to purchase a few supplies. Simple enough, except the seller may prefer a particular type of payment, or perhaps actual coins are scarce. Perhaps the transaction involves credit. Perhaps goods are exchanged directly. Perhaps payment will occur later. Colonial economies frequently operated through personal relationships and trust. Modern financial systems allow strangers to conduct transactions with relative ease. Colonial communities often relied more heavily upon reputation. People knew one another. They understood who paid debts reliably. They knew which merchants maintained fair practices. Trust carried economic value. A person's reputation could influence opportunities significantly. As the market grows busier, another reality becomes obvious. Coins are not always abundant. This surprises many people. After all, money seems essential. Yet various colonies periodically experienced shortages of hard currency. Actual coins could be difficult to obtain in sufficient quantities. Trade imbalances sometimes caused money to flow elsewhere. As a result, alternative arrangements developed. Credit became common. Goods sometimes served as forms of payment. Economic creativity became necessary. Imagine selling several barrels of grain rather than receiving a pile of coins immediately. You may receive credit toward future purchases. The arrangement works because both parties expect future interaction. Communities often function through ongoing relationships rather than isolated transactions. This approach offers advantages. It also creates complications. What happens if someone cannot repay a debt? What happens if a poor harvest reduces income? What happens if economic conditions change unexpectedly? Colonial Americans wrestled with these questions regularly. Debt became a familiar part of life, sometimes manageable, sometimes burdensome. As the morning continues, let us step inside a general store. The building contains a fascinating assortment of goods: tools, fabric, salt, candles, tea, nails, books, cooking supplies. Countless items line shelves and fill storage areas. To a modern observer, the selection appears limited. To colonial customers, the variety may seem impressive. Many products have traveled long distances before arriving here. Some crossed oceans, others passed through multiple hands. Transportation remains slow and expensive. Every journey increases costs. Distance affects prices significantly. A product readily available in one region may prove scarce elsewhere. Imagine waiting months for an important shipment. A storm delays the vessel. The goods arrive late. Prices rise due to scarcity. Customers become frustrated. Merchants become concerned. Such situations occurred frequently. Colonial economies depended heavily upon transportation networks vulnerable to weather and other disruptions. Patience was often required. Immediate gratification rarely existed. As midday approaches, merchants begin negotiating with customers. Negotiation itself forms an important skill. Fixed prices are not always the norm. Many transactions involve discussion. Both parties attempt to secure favorable terms. Experience matters. Knowledge matters. A skilled negotiator may obtain better outcomes than someone unfamiliar with local customs. Modern visitors accustomed to clearly labeled prices might find the process unusual. Yet for many colonial Americans, negotiation represented a normal part of economic life. Meanwhile, larger economic forces influence daily experiences even when ordinary people barely notice them. Trade policies, taxes, international conflicts, shipping regulations, political decisions made far away can affect local communities dramatically. Imagine being a farmer who simply wants to sell crops and support a family. Then a policy changes. Market conditions shift. Prices fluctuate. Suddenly, circumstances become more complicated. Colonial history contains many examples of ordinary people experiencing the consequences of distant decisions. Economic uncertainty often arrives from unexpected directions. As afternoon sunlight brightens the marketplace, attention turns toward imported goods. These products frequently attract interest because they offer items unavailable through local production. Fine fabrics, specialized tools, certain luxury goods, books from overseas, tea, sugar, various manufactured products. Yet imported goods also reveal another truth about colonial life. Many items considered ordinary today were once expensive. A modern household contains countless possessions. Colonial households generally contained fewer, not necessarily because people desired less, often because acquiring goods required substantial effort and expense. Objects tended to remain useful longer. Repairs were common. Careful maintenance was expected. Waste represented lost value. Imagine purchasing a quality tool. You expect to use it for years, perhaps decades. Replacement is neither quick nor cheap. Consequently, people treat possessions differently. Ownership carries greater responsibility. This mindset extends throughout colonial society. The same principle applies to clothing, furniture, equipment, household goods. Items are preserved because obtaining replacements may prove difficult. As the day continues, another aspect of colonial economics emerges. Apprenticeships. Many young people learn trades through structured arrangements with experienced craftsmen. A boy interested in becoming a carpenter, blacksmith, printer, or other skilled worker often spends years learning under a master craftsman. The process combines education with labor. Knowledge transfers gradually. Skills develop through practice. The arrangement benefits both parties. The apprentice gains experience. The master gains assistance. Colonial economies depend heavily upon such systems because specialized knowledge remains valuable. Learning a trade can significantly influence future opportunities. For many young people, apprenticeship represents a path toward stability and independence. As shadows begin lengthening, market activity gradually slows. Merchants organize inventory. Customers return home. Wagons depart carrying purchases. The settlement settles into a quieter rhythm. Yet financial concerns do not disappear when business hours end. Families continue thinking about expenses, future harvests, outstanding debts, potential opportunities. Economic decisions influence daily life constantly. The difference is that colonial economies often feel more personal. Transactions occur face to face. Reputations matter deeply. Relationships influence outcomes. The system functions through networks of trust as much as through currency itself. Modern economies remain interconnected. Colonial economies often felt interconnected on a human scale. People knew the individuals with whom they conducted business. Success and failure carried visible consequences. As evening arrives, candles illuminate homes across the settlement. Families gather around tables, discussing plans and concerns. Perhaps a farmer hopes for favorable prices next season. Perhaps a merchant awaits an important shipment. Perhaps a young apprentice dreams of one day opening his own workshop. Economic hopes and worries accompany people into the night. The pursuit of stability remains universal. Yet colonial America offered no guarantees. Fortunes could improve. Fortunes could decline. Unexpected events could transform circumstances quickly. And among the many forces capable of disrupting colonial life, nature remained one of the most powerful, because no amount of money could fully protect people from devastating storms, brutal winters, floods, droughts, and natural disasters. The next part of our journey will explore the unforgiving power of nature and reveal why the environment itself was often one of the most dangerous enemies colonial Americans ever faced. The next part of our journey will explore the unforgiving power of nature and reveal why the environment itself was often one of the most dangerous enemies colonial Americans ever faced. The settlement sleeps beneath a calm sky. Stars shimmer above the rooftops. A cool breeze moves gently through the trees. Somewhere in the darkness, a dog barks once before settling again. Everything feels peaceful, yet one of the most important lessons colonial Americans learned was that peace could be temporary. Nature often appeared calm before revealing its true power. Modern people possess countless tools that help reduce the impact of environmental dangers. Weather satellites track storms across oceans. Forecasts provide advance warnings. Engineers construct flood controls. Emergency services coordinate responses to disasters. Colonial Americans possessed none of these advantages. They lived much closer to the natural world, and the natural world could be remarkably unforgiving. Morning arrives quietly. The first rays of sunlight illuminate fields still covered with dew. Farmers step outside to examine crops. Merchants begin preparing for another day. Children complete their morning chores. Everything appears normal. But imagine that, far beyond the horizon, conditions are already changing. Dark clouds are gathering. Winds are strengthening. A storm is forming. Nobody knows it yet. There are no weather reports, no alerts, no warnings appearing on screens. The storm exists beyond human awareness. Hours later, the sky begins changing. At first, only subtle signs appear. The air feels heavier. Bird activity becomes unusual. A strange stillness settles across the landscape. Experienced colonists often notice these details. Generations spent close to nature taught people to observe carefully. Yet observation could only reveal so much. Many storms arrived with little notice. Imagine standing in a field as dark clouds roll overhead. The sunlight fades. The wind increases. Leaves twist and flutter. Then thunder echoes across the countryside. Work stops immediately. People hurry towards shelter. Animals become restless. The atmosphere itself feels tense. Moments later, rain begins falling. Then more rain. Then even more. Within a short time, the storm dominates everything. Roads become rivers of mud. Streams overflow their banks. Visibility disappears behind sheets of water. Travel becomes dangerous. Communication becomes difficult. The settlement's entire routine changes because nature has decided to interrupt it. Colonial Americans understood that many plans remained subject to forces beyond their control. A farmer could work diligently all year. One violent storm might destroy part of the harvest. Months of effort could vanish in a single afternoon. This uncertainty shaped people's attitudes toward preparation and risk. Nature always retained the ability to surprise them. As the storm continues, lightning flashes repeatedly across the sky. Today, modern buildings often contain protective systems. Colonial structures remained far more vulnerable. A single lightning strike could create catastrophe. Fire represented one of the greatest fears in colonial communities. Most buildings contained large amounts of wood. Open flames were common. Candles provided light. Fireplaces provided heat. Cooking often required open fires. The same tool that sustained life could also destroy it. Imagine a spark landing in the wrong place. At first, nobody notices. Then smoke appears. Then flames. Within minutes, a small problem becomes a serious emergency. There are no professional fire departments waiting nearby. Neighbors become the firefighters. Buckets are filled. People form lines. Everyone works desperately to contain the blaze. Sometimes they succeed. Sometimes, entire sections of a settlement disappear beneath flames. Colonial towns experienced devastating fires throughout their history. The threat never truly vanished. Even on calm days, people remained aware of the danger. As afternoon approaches, the storm finally weakens. Clouds begin drifting away. Sunlight returns. The settlement survives, but the landscape has changed. Roads are damaged. Fields contain standing water. Fences require repair. Work that seemed finished yesterday suddenly needs attention again. Nature has created new responsibilities. This pattern repeats constantly throughout colonial life. Every season introduces different challenges. Every season demands adaptation. Consider spring. Many modern people associate spring with flowers, warmer weather, and renewal. Colonial Americans certainly appreciated those things. Yet spring also brought flooding. Melting snow, combined with seasonal rain, could transform rivers into dangerous obstacles. Streams that seemed harmless during winter suddenly became powerful currents. Bridges sometimes washed away. Travel routes disappeared. Communities found themselves temporarily isolated. Imagine planning a journey only to discover that a river crossing has become impossible. The destination remains the same. The route no longer exists. Such situations occurred regularly. Nature dictated schedules more effectively than clocks ever could. Then came summer. At first glance, summer appears easier. Long days, warm temperatures, growing crops. Yet summer introduced its own difficulties. Heat could become exhausting. Work continued despite uncomfortable conditions. Fields demanded attention. Harvest preparations began. Insects multiplied. Disease sometimes spread more easily. Long hours under the sun tested endurance. Colonial labor rarely paused simply because temperatures became unpleasant. Imagine spending an entire day cutting hay beneath intense sunlight. Sweat soaks clothing. Muscles ache. The air feels heavy. Yet stopping means falling behind. The work must be completed. Nature determines the timing. People adapt accordingly. Autumn often provided relief. Cooler temperatures returned. Harvest season arrived. Communities gathered crops before winter. For many colonists, autumn represented both reward and anxiety. The harvest revealed whether months of effort had succeeded. A good harvest brought confidence. A disappointing harvest brought concern. Food stored during autumn would determine conditions during winter. Mistakes became difficult to correct once cold weather arrived. Then winter appeared. For modern people, winter often means adjusting a thermostat, wearing warmer clothing, and perhaps dealing with travel delays. Colonial winters felt far more significant. Imagine waking before sunrise on a January morning. The room is bitterly cold. Ice has formed along the inside edges of windows. The fire requires immediate attention. Every movement outside becomes more difficult. Snow covers roads. Water sources may freeze. Travel slows dramatically. Simple tasks require extra effort. Cold influences nearly every aspect of daily life. Fuel becomes essential. Families spend enormous amounts of time gathering and storing firewood because warmth means survival. A household that miscalculates its wood supply faces serious problems. The same applies to food. Winter punishes poor preparation. Colonial Americans understood this reality deeply. Many spent months preparing for conditions that modern heating systems largely eliminate. Yet even preparation could not solve every problem. Severe winters occasionally exceeded expectations. Storms trapped travelers. Livestock perished. Supplies dwindled faster than planned. Communities endured difficult seasons through determination and cooperation. Nature demanded respect. Those who underestimated it often suffered consequences. As evening approaches, the weather finally settles. The storm that began earlier has passed completely. The sky glows orange and gold as the sun sinks below the horizon. For now, conditions appear favorable. People return to unfinished tasks. Repairs begin. Life moves forward. Colonial Americans developed remarkable resilience because circumstances required it. Nature repeatedly interrupted their plans. They adapted repeatedly in return. This ongoing struggle helped shape the character of colonial society. Flexibility became valuable. Preparation became essential. Patience became necessary. No one controlled the environment. At best, people learned to work alongside it. As darkness spreads across the settlement, families gather indoors once again. The day's challenges become stories. The storm becomes another reminder, another lesson, another example of how fragile human plans can be when confronted by the power of nature. Yet storms, floods, droughts, and winter hardships were not the only dangers waiting beyond the safety of home, because the forests, rivers, and wilderness of colonial America were also inhabited by creatures that inspired fear, fascination, and sometimes genuine danger. In the next part of our journey, we will venture deeper into the wild landscape of colonial America and discover why encounters with animals from wolves and bears to snakes and countless smaller creatures could make survival far more difficult than many modern people imagine. In the next part of our journey, we will venture deeper into the wild landscape of colonial America and discover why encounters with animals from wolves and bears to snakes and countless smaller creatures could make survival far more difficult than many modern people imagine. The morning begins in silence. A thin layer of fog hangs between the trees surrounding the settlement. Dew glistens on tall grass. The forest appears peaceful from a distance, almost inviting. Many newcomers to colonial America likely felt the same way when they first arrived. The wilderness possessed a certain beauty. Towering trees stretched toward the sky. Rivers wound through untouched landscapes. Birdsong echoed from hidden branches. Sunlight filtered through leaves in dazzling patterns. The natural world could be breathtaking. It could also be dangerous. Modern people often experience wildlife from a position of relative safety. Animals are observed in documentaries, nature parks, zoos, or through the windows of vehicles. Colonial Americans interacted with wildlife much more directly. The wilderness surrounded them. Animals shared the landscape, and not every encounter ended peacefully. Imagine leaving the settlement shortly after sunrise. You follow a narrow path leading into the forest. The air smells of damp earth and pine needles. The sounds of civilization gradually fade behind you. Soon, only the noises of nature remain. At first, everything feels calm. A squirrel darts across the trail. Birds move among the branches overhead. Nothing seems threatening. Then you realize something important. You are not alone. The forest contains countless creatures, most of which remain unseen. Some watch from the undergrowth. Others move quietly through distant trees. Many animals avoid humans whenever possible. Not all do. Colonial settlers quickly learned to respect wildlife. Among the animals that attracted the most attention were wolves. Today, wolves often occupy a prominent place in stories and folklore. In colonial America, they occupied a place in everyday concerns. Wolves generally preferred avoiding people, yet they still worried settlers, particularly those responsible for livestock. Imagine spending months raising sheep only to discover signs of predators nearby. The concern becomes understandable. Livestock represented wealth. Livestock represented food. Livestock represented future security. Losing animals carried real consequences. As a result, communities frequently viewed wolves as threats. Stories circulated about sightings. Tracks found near settlements generated discussion. How much actual danger wolves posed varied by location and circumstance. Fear often amplified the stories. Even so, their presence remained a fact of frontier life. Far larger than wolves were the bears. Black bears inhabited many regions of colonial America. Most preferred avoiding human contact. However, usually and always are not the same thing. Imagine walking through dense woods while gathering firewood. The forest suddenly grows quiet. A large, dark shape appears between the trees. For a moment, neither you nor the animal moves. The encounter lasts only seconds, yet those seconds feel much longer. Many colonial Americans experienced moments like this. Wild animals did not need to attack people to create anxiety. Their mere presence commanded attention. Bears possessed tremendous strength. Everyone understood that fact. Respecting their space often represented the safest choice. As the morning progresses, Another group of animals deserves attention. Snakes. The colonies contained numerous snake species, including several venomous varieties. Today, medical treatment significantly improves outcomes for snake bites. Colonial Americans faced a more uncertain situation. Imagine working in a field during warm weather. You reach into tall grass. Suddenly, something moves. Pain follows immediately. What happens next depends upon many factors: the type of snake, the severity of the bite, the availability of help, the condition of the victim. What might become an unpleasant emergency today could become a life-threatening crisis in the colonial era. Consequently, people learned caution. Awareness became a survival skill. The wilderness rewarded those who paid attention. Yet large predators and venomous snakes were not always the greatest threat. Sometimes smaller creatures caused greater suffering. Mosquitoes provide an excellent example. Few modern people would place mosquitoes among history's most dangerous animals. Colonial Americans might have viewed the matter differently. Mosquitoes spread diseases. They made outdoor work miserable. They thrived in certain environments. Entire communities experienced their effects. Imagine spending a humid summer evening near marshland. The air feels heavy. Insects seem everywhere. Attempts to avoid them prove largely unsuccessful. The experience quickly becomes exhausting. Now imagine facing those conditions repeatedly, day after day, week after week. Small discomforts accumulate. Colonial life often involved countless minor hardships that modern conveniences now minimize. The insects represented one of them. Ticks presented another challenge. Many people encountered them while traveling through forests or working in fields. The connection between ticks and disease remained poorly understood. Yet the consequences of bites could still be serious. Once again, the natural world contained hazards that people only partially understood. This uncertainty increased anxiety. Known dangers are often easier to manage than mysterious ones. As midday approaches, let us consider another animal that played a major role in colonial life. The horse. Unlike predators or pests, horses usually improved daily life. They transported people, pulled wagons, helped with farming, connected distant communities. Colonial society depended heavily upon them. Yet horses also introduced risks. A frightened horse could injure someone. A fall could result in broken bones. Travel accidents occurred regularly. Modern vehicles create their own dangers. Colonial transportation created different ones. Imagine riding along a rough forest road. The horse stumbles unexpectedly. The rider loses balance. What happens next may determine weeks, months, or even years of recovery. In a world with limited medical care, accidents mattered greatly. People learned to handle animals carefully because mistakes carried consequences. as afternoon sunlight filters through the trees, another reality becomes apparent. Many animals served as valuable resources. Colonial Americans hunted for food, hunted for fur, hunted for practical materials. The wilderness supplied resources that supported survival. Deer provided meat. Beavers provided fur. Numerous species contributed to local economies. For many families, hunting supplemented agriculture. Success brought valuable supplies. Failure meant relying more heavily upon stored food. Nature offered opportunities as well as risks. The relationship remained complicated. Colonial Americans depended upon the wilderness while simultaneously struggling against its challenges. This balance shaped frontier life. The forest was neither friend nor enemy. It was simply a reality, a vast, powerful reality that demanded respect. As the afternoon slowly gives way to evening, shadows lengthen beneath the trees. Bird activity changes. The sounds of the forest shift. Daytime creatures retreat. Nocturnal creatures begin emerging. The transformation feels subtle at first, then increasingly noticeable. The wilderness after sunset becomes a different place. Imagine standing at the edge of a forest as darkness approaches. The path ahead grows difficult to see. Strange noises emerge from unseen locations. Branches crack somewhere in the distance. Leaves rustle unexpectedly. Every sound seems larger. Every movement attracts attention. Most of these noises have harmless explanations. An owl, a deer, a raccoon. The imagination often supplies more frightening possibilities. Colonial Americans understood the psychological power of darkness. Without electric lights, the night remained truly dark. The wilderness felt larger after sunset, more mysterious, more uncertain. Stories naturally developed around these experiences. Tales of unusual encounters circulated through settlements. Some were accurate, some became exaggerated. Human beings have always enjoyed storytelling. The frontier provided plenty of material. As night settles fully across the landscape, families remain inside their homes. Doors are secured. Fires burn warmly. Outside, countless animals continue their routines unseen. The wilderness never sleeps completely. It simply changes shifts. For colonial settlers, this reality became normal. The natural world surrounded them constantly. They learned to navigate it, respect it, sometimes fear it, often depend upon it. And while wildlife could certainly make life difficult, another challenge affected every aspect of colonial existence even more directly. Food, not obtaining it, keeping it, because in colonial America, preserving food before it spoiled could determine whether a family enjoyed a comfortable winter or faced months of hunger. The next part of our journey will explore the constant struggle against spoilage, scarcity, and starvation, and reveal why a modern refrigerator might seem like pure magic to a colonial family. The next part of our journey will explore the constant struggle against spoilage, scarcity, and starvation, and reveal why a modern refrigerator might seem like pure magic to a colonial family. The forest remains quiet as dawn slowly approaches. A pale band of light appears on the eastern horizon. The stars begin fatting one by one. Across the settlement, families stir from sleep and prepare for another day. Breakfast will soon be served. At least that is the hope for people living in colonial America. Food represented far more than comfort. Food represented security. Food represented planning. Food represented survival itself. Modern people rarely spend much time worrying about whether food will remain edible tomorrow. Refrigerators hum quietly in kitchens. Freezers preserve supplies for months. Supermarkets restock shelves continuously. If milk spoils, more can usually be purchased. If meat expires, replacement remains available. Colonial Americans lived in a completely different reality. The moment food was harvested, slaughtered, baked, or prepared, a race against time began. Nature wanted to reclaim it. Bacteria wanted to consume it. Insects wanted to invade it. Mold wanted to grow upon it. Without modern preservation methods, every family faced a constant struggle against spoilage. Imagine waking on a warm summer morning. A piece of fresh meat hangs in storage. Today, you know exactly where that meat would go. Into a refrigerator, into a freezer, into a controlled environment designed to slow decay. Colonial families possessed no such luxury. Fresh meat began spoiling almost immediately. Something had to be done. Quickly, this necessity shaped daily life. People developed preservation techniques because survival demanded them. Salt became one of the most valuable resources available. Its importance is difficult for modern people to fully appreciate. Today, salt sits quietly on dining tables. Colonial Americans often viewed it as essential. Without salt, preserving meat became far more difficult. Imagine a family preparing pork for winter storage. The process requires significant labor. Animals must be butchered. Meat must be cut properly. Salt must be applied carefully. Storage conditions must remain suitable. Mistakes create risks. A ruined food supply could become a disaster months later when alternative options disappear. As the morning progresses, smoke rises from several structures throughout the settlement. Some of that smoke comes from fireplaces. Some comes from smokehouses. Smoking food represented another important preservation method. The principle was simple. Expose food to controlled smoke for extended periods. Reduce moisture. Slow spoilage. Extend usefulness. The process demanded patience. Days of preparation could help provide weeks or months of additional food security. Imagine stepping inside a smokehouse. The air smells strongly of wood smoke. Rows of meat hang from beams overhead. Everything appears still, yet important work is taking place. The goal is not flavor alone. The goal is survival. Each preserved piece of food represents insurance against future hardship. Colonial Americans constantly thought ahead because experience taught them that shortages could arrive unexpectedly. As sunlight strengthens, attention turns toward crops. Fields stretch across the landscape. Corn remains one of the most important. Beans contribute valuable nutrition. Squash appears frequently. Various fruits and vegetables grow, depending upon region and climate. Harvest season brings abundance. The challenge comes afterward. How do you keep that abundance from disappearing? Imagine collecting apples during autumn. The harvest looks impressive. Baskets overflow with fruit. Success feels tangible. Yet fresh apples cannot last forever. Some will spoil. Some will be eaten quickly. Others must be preserved. Families dry fruit. Store it carefully. Transform it into products that remain useful longer. Every successful preservation effort extends food supplies deeper into winter. The same principle applies throughout colonial life. Preparation transforms uncertainty into security, at least partially. Nature always retains the ability to interfere. As midday approaches, let us visit a cellar. Many colonial homes relied upon root cellars or similar storage spaces. These areas remained cooler than the outside environment. They helped preserve certain foods for longer periods. Imagine descending a short staircase beneath a house. The temperature drops noticeably. Shelves contain vegetables, preserved foods, and stored supplies. The space feels practical rather than impressive, yet it represents an important technology of its time. Families carefully monitored these storage areas. A successful cellar could significantly improve winter survival. A failed one created problems. Moisture levels mattered. Temperature mattered. Rodents presented concerns. Every detail influenced outcomes. Colonial Americans often became experts in practical problem solving because daily life rewarded such knowledge. As afternoon unfolds, another enemy appears. Rats, mice, other pests. The battle against spoilage involved more than bacteria and mold. Animals constantly searched for food. Stored supplies attracted unwanted attention. Imagine spending months growing grain, harvesting it, drying it, storing it, then discovering signs of rodents among the supplies. The frustration would be considerable. Colonial families devoted significant effort to protecting food from pests. Cats became valuable allies. Storage methods evolved through experience. Constant vigilance remained necessary. Food security depended upon countless small decisions. Neglect any one of them, and problems could follow. Yet even the best preparations sometimes failed. A harsh winter might last longer than expected. A previous harvest might have been disappointing. Unexpected guests could increase consumption. Illness might reduce a family's ability to work. Circumstances changed. Carefully calculated plans occasionally proved insufficient. Imagine opening storage containers in late winter. The supplies appear lower than expected. Not dangerously low yet, but lower. The realization creates concern. Spring remains weeks away, perhaps months. The next harvest feels distant. Every meal now carries additional significance. Colonial Americans understood these moments. Many experienced them personally. The fear was not always starvation. Often it was uncertainty, not knowing whether supplies would last, not knowing whether future conditions would improve. The psychological burden could be substantial. As the afternoon slowly fades toward evening, let us consider a modern refrigerator, not as a household appliance, as a miracle. Imagine transporting a refrigerator into colonial America. People would see fresh food remaining edible for days, milk lasting longer, meat staying safe, leftovers remaining usable. The device would appear extraordinary, almost magical. It would solve problems that consumed enormous amounts of time and energy. Modern technology often becomes invisible through familiarity. Colonial life reminds us how valuable these innovations truly are. Every convenience represents a challenge that previous generations struggled to overcome. Food preservation provides a perfect example. Today, most people barely think about it. Colonial Americans thought about it constantly. As evening arrives, families gather around tables for supper. Meals vary. Some contain fresh ingredients. Others rely heavily upon preserved foods. Seasonal availability shapes every menu. The concept of obtaining strawberries in winter or imported foods from distant continents remains largely unimaginable for ordinary people. People eat what is available, what is affordable, what has survived storage. The relationship between humans and food feels direct, immediate, personal. Every bite reflects labor performed weeks, months, or even seasons earlier. Outside, darkness settles across fields and forests. The day's work comes to an end. Fires crackle softly. Children grow sleepy. Adults discuss plans for tomorrow. Yet beneath these ordinary moments lies a truth that every colonial family understands. Food is never guaranteed. Preparation reduces risk. Preparation does not eliminate it. Nature still holds influence. Weather still holds influence. Chance still holds influence. And among the many factors capable of disrupting food supplies, perhaps none inspired greater fear than prolonged periods of hunger. Because throughout colonial America, some communities faced shortages severe enough to test the limits of human endurance. In the next part of our journey, we will explore famine, food scarcity, desperate winters, and the difficult choices families sometimes faced when survival itself became uncertain. In the next part of our journey, we will explore famine, food scarcity, desperate winters, and the difficult choices families sometimes faced when survival itself became uncertain. The evening fire burns low. Outside, a cold wind moves through the trees surrounding the settlement. The stars shine brightly overhead, but few people are outside to admire them. Most families have already retreated indoors, gathering around whatever warmth they can maintain. Tonight, the food stores seem adequate. Tonight, there is enough. But one of the great fears of colonial America was the knowledge that conditions could change. Slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed at first. Then all at once. Imagine beginning the year with confidence. The previous harvest was acceptable. Supplies seem sufficient. Livestock appear healthy. Nothing feels especially alarming. Then spring arrives later than expected. Planting is delayed. Heavy rains damage fields. Some seeds fail. The growing season becomes unpredictable. People remain hopeful. After all, there is still time. Summer arrives. The weather improves briefly. Then drought appears. Weeks pass without adequate rainfall. Streams shrink. Soil hardens. Crops struggle. Farmers watch the sky constantly. Every cloud becomes important. Every distant rumble of thunder attracts attention. Nature has become the central topic of conversation. Yet the rain still refuses to come. By autumn, the consequences begin appearing. The harvest is smaller, not catastrophic perhaps, but smaller than planned, smaller than needed. Families notice immediately. Storage areas contain fewer supplies. Calculations change. Expectations change. Concerns begin quietly spreading through the community. No one panics. Not yet. Colonial Americans understood hardship. They had survived difficult years before, but everyone recognizes the same uncomfortable reality. Winter is coming, and winter does not care about optimism. As the story continues, imagine a family sitting around a table during late autumn. The father reviews stored supplies. The mother does the same. Both arrive at similar conclusions. The food might last. It might not. The difference depends upon dozens of unpredictable factors. How severe will winter become? Will hunting provide additional food? Will livestock remain healthy? Will unexpected problems emerge? No one knows. The uncertainty becomes its own burden. Modern people often underestimate how exhausting uncertainty can be. The body grows tired from labor. The mind grows tired from worry. Colonial families frequently carried both burdens simultaneously. Winter eventually arrives. At first, conditions seem manageable. Snow covers the landscape. Temperatures drop. People remain indoors more frequently. Stored food begins serving its intended purpose. This is exactly what preparation was meant for. The system appears to be working. Then the season continues, and continues, and continues. Weeks pass. Snow remains. Roads become difficult to use. Travel slows dramatically. Fresh supplies become harder to obtain. The food stores gradually shrink. A little each day. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to notice. Imagine opening a storage barrel. The contents are lower than they were last week. Not empty, just lower. A few days later, lower again. The decline becomes impossible to ignore. Every meal now feels connected to a visible reduction in remaining supplies. Each serving carries a cost. The food consumed today cannot be consumed tomorrow. Colonial Americans understood this arithmetic intimately. Many modern people rarely encounter such calculations. Food simply appears. When supplies decrease, replacements usually exist. For colonial families facing a difficult winter, replacement options might be limited. As January becomes February, concerns intensify. Portions become smaller. Nothing drastic initially, just slightly smaller, then slightly smaller again. People adapt. Adults often eat less, so children can eat more. Parents throughout history have made such sacrifices. Colonial America provided many opportunities for them. Imagine a mother quietly placing a larger portion on her child's plate while taking less for herself. The child may not notice. The mother certainly notices. These small acts occur repeatedly during difficult times. They rarely appear in official records, yet they formed part of daily life. Hunger often arrives gradually, not as a dramatic event, as a slow accumulation of shortages, a persistent awareness that something important is missing. The body notices first. Energy decreases. Work feels harder. Concentration becomes difficult. The cold feels colder. Recovery from physical labor takes longer. People continue functioning. They simply do so less effectively. Colonial communities experiencing food shortages often faced exactly these challenges. Meanwhile, opportunities to solve the problem remained limited. Today, a community facing food shortages may receive aid from distant regions. Transportation networks move supplies rapidly. Emergency responses can be organized. Colonial settlements possessed fewer options. If local resources became scarce, help might be far away. Travel itself could be dangerous during winter. Distance became an obstacle. Time became an obstacle. Weather became an obstacle. Imagine hearing rumors that another settlement has better supplies. The news sounds promising, yet reaching that settlement requires days of travel through snow-covered terrain. The journey itself consumes resources. Success is uncertain. Risk becomes unavoidable. Such decisions confronted colonial families regularly. As the winter deepens, hunting becomes increasingly important. Many families turn toward the wilderness for additional food. Some succeed, Others do not. Nature remains unpredictable. A skilled hunter may return with valuable supplies. Another may spend days searching, with little to show for the effort. Wild game cannot always compensate for agricultural failures. The forest offers opportunities. It offers no guarantees. This uncertainty reinforces a lesson that appears repeatedly throughout colonial history. Survival depends upon many factors working together. A good harvest alone may not be enough. Hard work alone may not be enough. Preparation alone may not be enough. Success often requires favorable circumstances as well. Colonial Americans recognized this reality better than most. They lived close enough to nature to understand how limited human control can be. As February approaches its end, signs of spring begin appearing. The days grow slightly longer. The sun feels marginally stronger. Snow begins melting in certain places. Hope returns cautiously. Yet this period can be surprisingly dangerous. Food stores are often at their lowest precisely when winter seems almost over. People can see relief approaching. They simply have not reached it yet. Imagine standing outside on a chilly morning. Water drips from melting icicles. Birds begin returning. The world hints at renewal. Meanwhile, the pantry remains nearly empty. The contrast feels cruel. Spring appears close enough to touch. Food remains frustratingly distant. Many historical communities experienced this difficult transition period. Historians sometimes refer to it as a season of scarcity. The old supplies are nearly exhausted. The new growing season has not yet produced results. Patience becomes essential. Endurance becomes essential. Families must survive the gap. And sometimes they did so through remarkable creativity. People learned to stretch supplies, substitute ingredients, gather wild foods, adapt recipes. Resourcefulness became a survival skill. Colonial Americans frequently displayed ingenuity because circumstances demanded it. Necessity encouraged innovation long before the phrase became popular. Eventually, spring arrives fully. Fields become active again. Planting begins. Fresh food gradually returns. The immediate crisis passes. Relief spreads through the community. People breathe easier, yet the memory remains. No one forgets a difficult winter. No one forgets months spent wondering whether supplies would last. Such experiences leave lasting impressions. They influence future decisions. They encourage greater preparation. They encourage caution. The fear of scarcity often remains long after abundance returns. As evening settles over the settlement once more, families gather around tables that now contain slightly more food than they did weeks earlier. The worst appears to be over, for now, but colonial America offered countless other challenges waiting beyond the next season, because even when food was available and nature cooperated, another threat could suddenly arrive and disrupt everything. Conflict, violence, fear. The next stage of our journey will explore crime, law enforcement, punishment, and personal safety in colonial America, and reveal why many modern people would find the colonial justice system both unfamiliar and deeply unsettling. Conflict, violence, fear. The next stage of our journey will explore crime, law enforcement, punishment, and personal safety in colonial America, and reveal why many modern people would find the colonial justice system both unfamiliar and deeply unsettling. The first hints of dawn appear over the settlement. After months of following colonial families through harsh winters, dangerous roads, uncertain harvests, disease, wilderness, and endless labor, it may seem as though we have already encountered every major obstacle that life in colonial America could offer. Yet another challenge remained: human beings themselves. Nature could be unpredictable, weather could be cruel, food could become scarce, but people possessed the unique ability to create entirely new problems for one another. And in colonial America, maintaining order across scattered settlements was rarely simple. Imagine waking before sunrise to discover that something has been stolen. Perhaps a tool, perhaps livestock, perhaps stored food. Today, many people would immediately contact law enforcement. Colonial Americans lived in a very different world. Police departments, as modern societies understand them, did not yet exist. Instead, communities relied upon local systems of responsibility. Neighbors watched neighbors. Town officials performed various duties. Citizens often played direct roles in maintaining order. In small settlements, anonymity was difficult. People generally knew one another. That familiarity helped discourage certain crimes. It also created complications. When everyone knows everyone else, accusations become personal. Disputes spread quickly. Rumors spread even faster. Imagine a missing horse. The animal disappears during the night. By morning, questions begin circulating. Who saw it last? Who was nearby? Who recently argued with the owner? Conversations emerge immediately. Suspicion grows. Without modern investigative techniques, communities often relied heavily upon testimony, reputation, and observation. Sometimes this worked reasonably well. Sometimes mistakes occurred. Colonial justice reflected the limitations of the era. Evidence remained important, yet available evidence differed significantly from modern standards. No fingerprint databases existed. No forensic laboratories existed. No surveillance cameras documented events. Witnesses mattered. Confessions mattered. Local knowledge mattered. The truth could be difficult to establish. As the settlement becomes active, another reality appears. Most people were law-abiding. The majority simply wanted stability. They wanted safe communities. They wanted successful harvests. They wanted opportunities to support their families. Order benefited everyone. Consequently, communities often took violations seriously. Punishments could be public. The goal extended beyond correcting behavior. Authorities also hoped to discourage others from committing similar offenses. Imagine standing in a colonial town square. Residents gather nearby. An individual convicted of a crime faces punishment before the community. The experience is intentionally visible. Public humiliation serves as part of the penalty. Modern observers frequently find such practices uncomfortable. Colonial societies viewed them differently. Visibility reinforced social expectations. The community witnessed consequences directly. Punishments varied considerably depending upon location, time period, and offense. Fines appeared frequently. Restitution sometimes occurred. More severe penalties existed for more serious crimes. The system reflected contemporary beliefs about justice, order, and deterrence. Not everyone agreed with every outcome. Disputes about fairness existed then just as they exist now. Human societies have always debated justice. As the morning progresses, consider another source of conflict. Property. Land represented opportunity. Land represented wealth. Land represented future security. Consequently, disagreements over boundaries, ownership, and usage appeared regularly. Imagine two neighbors examining a fence line. One believes the boundary lies in one location. The other disagrees. The dispute begins politely. Then frustration grows. Then additional people become involved. What started as a simple disagreement develops into a larger problem. Colonial courts often spent considerable time resolving such matters. The expanding colonies created countless opportunities for competing claims and misunderstandings. Meanwhile, debt created its own tensions. Throughout our journey, we have already seen how important credit was within colonial economies. Most of the time, those arrangements functioned adequately. Sometimes they did not. Imagine borrowing money or supplies during a difficult season. The expectation is repayment later. Then circumstances change. A crop fails. An illness interrupts work. Income declines. Repayment becomes difficult. The debt remains. Economic problems frequently transformed into legal problems. Courts became involved. Relationships suffered. The issue extended beyond finances. It affected trust itself. As midday approaches, let us consider personal safety. Many modern people assume that the greatest threats in colonial America came from wilderness dangers. Wolves, bears, storms, disease. Those dangers certainly existed. Yet ordinary accidents likely posed a greater risk to many individuals. Falls, workplace injuries, transportation mishaps, house fires, countless everyday hazards surrounded colonial life. Modern modern safety regulations had not yet emerged. Protective equipment remained limited. People routinely performed tasks that carried significant risks. A ladder could fail, a horse could throw its rider, an axe could slip, a roof could collapse. Danger often appeared in ordinary places. This reality helps explain why colonial communities valued practical knowledge so highly. Experience reduced risk. Good judgment reduced risk. Careful habits reduced risk. No one could eliminate danger entirely. People simply learned to navigate it. As afternoon sunlight spreads across the settlement, daily life continues. Children play, merchants conduct business, farmers work their fields, blacksmiths shape iron. The community functions much as it always has, and that observation reveals something important. Despite all the hardships we have encountered throughout this journey, colonial America was not a place of constant disaster. People laughed, people celebrated, people married, people raised families, people formed friendships. Life continued. The hardships were real. The joys were real as well. Human beings possess a remarkable ability to adapt. Colonial Americans adapted because they had to. Many found satisfaction in their accomplishments: a completed harvest, a successful business, a healthy family, a sturdy home. Achievements carried tremendous meaning because obtaining them required genuine effort. As evening approaches, smoke rises gently from chimneys throughout the settlement. The day's labor gradually concludes. Families gather indoors. Candles illuminate small rooms. Voices drift through the twilight. Outside, darkness slowly returns to the landscape. The same darkness that has accompanied us throughout this journey. The same darkness experienced by generations of colonists who lived without electric lights. Modern medicine, rapid transportation, refrigeration, central heating, or instant communication. And as we sit quietly beside the fire one final time, a larger picture begins to emerge. Why wouldn't most modern people survive colonial America? Not because colonial Americans were somehow superhuman, not because every day involved extraordinary heroism. The answer is simpler. Colonial life demanded constant effort. Every meal required work. Every warm room required work. Every safe home required work. Every successful harvest required work. People lived closer to nature, closer to uncertainty, and closer to the consequences of failure than most modern societies do today. A missed harvest could matter enormously. A minor injury could become serious. A severe winter could reshape an entire year. The safety nets that modern people rely upon simply did not exist. Yet, despite those difficulties, millions of people built lives across the colonies. They cleared forests, established farms, created towns, constructed roads, developed businesses, raised families, and gradually transformed a a collection of fragile settlements into growing communities. Their world was harsher. Their world was slower. Their world demanded patience, endurance, and adaptability in ways that many modern people would find overwhelming. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson colonial America offers. The people who lived there were not surviving because conditions were easy. They were surviving because they learned day after day, season after season, how to adapt to a demanding environment. As the fire burns lower and the settlement settles into silence, our long journey through colonial America finally comes to an end. The roads disappear into darkness. The forests grow quiet. The candles flicker one last time. And somewhere beyond the trees, another colonial dawn waits for people who must once again rise before sunrise and begin the endless work of survival. If you want to continue the journey, the next video is waiting.